Snapshot, that's my brief, and it will be a condensing of a paper that, did we mention that Keith and I went to Crete? So it's a condensing of the presentation I did to the network, and the title I hope doesn't sound too sort of aggressive, Proving Our Worth and Standing Our Ground. It's a title that's quite deliberate because it feels to me as if that's the theme that I've heard for the past 20 odd years that I've been involved in this association, and feel really passionate about the way that we do this, that we do prove our worth and stand our ground in our organisations. And conversations we've had so far and presentations really make me feel that this is as current now as it was 20 plus years ago, when people were just emerging into getting spiritual care really on the map in the places where they were. So, a condensed version, I'll talk quite quickly. Sorry there won't be much chance for conversation after. There we are. So a patient some years ago said to me, I'm a lifelong atheist, so what on earth am I doing talking to a chaplain? And I remember this man well. He was a patient who'd been in active naval service in the Falklands, and he'd carried with him a trauma of those events, a specific event, for many, many years. And it had been a daily burden to him. He'd never spoken to his family about it or anyone else. And he decided one day that he needed to speak to somebody who had faith. And we talked about the situation that he'd carried. His experience was that it moved from being a daily burden of weight to being something he could sit more lightly to and share with his family. Now, we know these stories. You'll have experienced them too, where an intervention with ourselves, an encounter with a chaplain, a member of the spiritual care team, shifts things for people. And people sometimes aren't quite sure why, but there's something about our interaction, the language that we bring to it, that helps people feel better. The frustration, though, is that after 60 plus years of modern hospice care, as a discipline within healthcare, we still feel we have more of a vulnerability about our place at the table than perhaps other healthcare professionals. And this worries me. So I wonder why then still posts are being lost, as we thought about, and chaplains not replaced. Why is there this lingering apprehension, even suspicion, about chaplaincy as part of the wider team? Is the name a hindrance? How do we maintain a presence that we know and patients experience as valuable and essential, especially at the end of life? Some of you will remember when our consultant in Western, Julian Abel, came to speak to the conference a few years ago. And I remember him saying, I've got about 25 drugs in my case. You've got so much more. And that's what I want us to hear today, and remember that although it feels as if we live on a continual edge of needing to prove the value of spiritual care, and having the physical presence of a skilled, trained professional in place to lead and develop that area, we're still thinking, who's in charge now? Do they get on with me? Do they like me? Do they value spiritual care? Sometimes it feels like we're really on a wobbly axis, doesn't it? And it can change in a moment. What do we do? Well, just briefly, I think there are two things that we can do to at least maintain our visibility and the value of what we do. And the first one really is that we embed the concept of spiritual care in our organisation. And the conversations are that people are really trying to do this. And of course, we know the value. But for many people, it's a true challenge to really get the senior management team, the trustee board, whoever it is, to say, actually, it matters that we have this person to lead this service in place. Part of the UK experience is challenged, I think. And we'll have the results of the census in a little while, where people will be identifying themselves as non-religious. And how does that affect the place of spiritual care teams in our organisations? Are managers going to say, well, people aren't so religious, so we don't really need a chaplain? And that old language, that binary language that Lawrence was talking about, is still so prevalent. So we can embed the NHS Scotland Spiritual Care Matters said some years ago now, we live in a multicultural world where religious labels are too often used. Our differences are part of an enriching diversity of our humanity. Spiritual care in the NHS must be inclusive and accepting human difference. We know the facts, we know the efficacy of spiritual care, so we have to find ways of embedding not our personalities, because we'll come and go, but our work, our policy, our raison d'etre, really, against the apathy, the indifference that we sometimes encounter. And the question really is, who are we to our organisations now? How are we perceived? So we embed and we consider who we are to our organisations. And then just secondly, and quite briefly, we collect evidence. Collect evidence. We've come a long way from those days where we used to scribble on a bit of paper and it would be filed away in a sheaf of patient notes that nobody ever read. Now we have access to electronic databases where we record our encounters with patients, and our volunteers do the same. No matter how insubstantial it seems an encounter, we know that those, hi, how are you, I'm all right, can lead to something else as they break the ice and lead to something more significant. So we record. You know, I've been around the block a while here, and I remember in the early 2000s the excitement, and some of you were there too, the excitement of developing the core competencies, the standards, the code of conduct, all those documents that we now take for granted. It was so good to be part of those developments because it kind of gave us a seat at the table. It made our profession say, we are a profession. We can sit alongside the physiotherapists, the other healthcare professions who've got this. We've got it too. We've a right to be there. And obviously research and case study work has moved on apace. So do those projects where you are. Be visible, be seen where you are, and do the work. Just finally, this is my last quote. I'll say it's a condensed version. Prove your worth, stand your ground. In the book that Bob and I edited a few years ago now, Baroness Laura Finlay said, it's the chaplain, by being there and listening, who can facilitate the shaping and thinking and perceiving, provide some security through their very presence, and allow the person to find their own hope and their way forward as they face the passing out of this life. That's our role, that's what we do. So let's go and do it. Thanks.